New technology is changing the relationship between the employer and the employee. In some ways, there are more efficient ways to do things now that we just couldn't do as easily a few years ago. It's now easier to track the use of time, to distinguish work and the personal use of technology, to protect proprietary information, to manage performance of employees, and even the issue of privacy itself starts to come up more often. Advancements in technology also have changed how we do our jobs, and perhaps what employers and employees can reasonably expect of one another. The computer and the internet have made it possible to work from home, for instance, and increases in productivity have also opened the way for employers to start asking more of their workers, and even there's been some blurring of the lines between work and leisure on the job. Now, advancing technology is also changing the way that employers can manage their employees. Now, since we now do so much by computer, it's easy to keep track of all the things we do, our work, and even how to improve our efficiency. And management can use the information to track and create better ways to serve clients, cut waste, and generate more revenue. And this involves monitoring, watching the work that employees are doing, and monitoring email as well as the use of the internet. Now, it can all lead to some hidden ethical issues. Employees may not understand the implications of what information or sites they access and that it can be monitored. And there's also the problem that there are people who know and understand how to use the technology, and they may be able to take advantage of those who don't know how to use it. Still, though, it would be unreasonable to say that management should not be able to monitor the employees or the workplace at all. There are some good reasons for monitoring, after all. A manager does have to oversee worker productivity and effective performance, and even take care of such things as employee benefits, sick time, and other accounting procedures, even payroll. All that's done by high tech now. Controlling a rise in the personal email use on the job, yeah, that's a manager's responsibility, and more companies are indeed finding employees accessing sex or other non-business sites, and they have to protect the company from theft or other employee actions that might lead to legal liabilities. There are, after all, those cases that would arise when somebody somewhere is going to say that the company should have known that wrongdoing was being done. Well, monitoring will be a part of management, so there are some practices that are starting to form to keep it a little more ethical, in fact, quite a bit more ethical. For instance, some companies are now starting to set aside areas where employees can use non-monitored phones or computers and have established areas where there'll be no monitoring at all, such as restrooms, for instance. So the idea is that monitoring has to be limited within the workplace. Employees have access to the information gathered. There be no secret monitoring. It's only job-related information, agreements on disclosure of collected information, and a prohibition against discrimination based on off-work activities. Another area of rising monitoring is that in the case of drug testing. And we're starting to see more and more of it in the workplace. As a matter of fact, it's hard to get a job in most areas now without going through a drug test. And there is more history in this than perhaps in other areas that would involve privacy in the workplace. It's actually becoming generally quite well accepted by both employers and employees, but it's still not without controversy. Employers argue that the business can be held liable for the legal violations a worker commits on the job under drug use, so it's essential that the employer control that workplace. On the other hand, employees would argue that drug usage only matters if it directly affects the job. And there's a feeling that a drug test can actually imply one's having to prove his or her innocence, rather than being prosecuted for some wrongdoing. Well, it's becoming more and more acceptable on both sides that if drug testing includes a task force, that it be made up of employees and supervisors. That's a big step forward. Also, that it's random, with effective communication, that treatment is available, and instead of automatic termination, there would be that treatment. And if there's no distinction between managers and workers, everybody would be treated the same. That's also seen as a big step forward. Other areas of monitoring are also coming under critical scrutiny. Now, these can involve health, technological testing, genetics testing, and the regulation of off-work acts and other privacy issues that have arisen since the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. Now, in regard to health issues, the Americans with Disabilities Act and HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, limit the use of protected health information that may be used. Genetics testing is something that could go far beyond what we now know as an insurance company's inquiries about the family disease history. Well, there's an upside that finding conditions could help employees fit into the workplace positions more effectively, but there can also be a significant potential for violating privacy. So far, the legalities of genetic testing is far from being settled in the courts. Other issues that are getting attention for ethical scrutiny include actions taken by employers for issues such as smoking, weight, marital status, workplace dating, and political involvement. And finally, there have been some major shifts in privacy issues since the September 11th attacks in 2001. A number of actions have been taken to give the government more authority to monitor potential terrorist activity. Some have worried civil libertarians. One of these is the Patriot Act. Now, government now has the authority to use internet surveillance technology to open access to sensitive information with only a court order, that in place of the old judicial warrant, and it makes it a crime for knowingly and intentionally aiding terrorists. Government agencies now also have the increased ability to share information among themselves. It used to be a very difficult thing to do. Then we come into the concept of Title II. That allows enhanced surveillance to intercept wire, oral, and electronic communications related to terrorism, computer fraud, and abuse. And there can also be more direct surveillance of individuals. And there have also been some reactions, as you might expect. Warnings are now even being posted in some libraries that computer use can be monitored by federal agencies. And the ACLU has passed a number of its own resolutions against the act. The Patriot Act has also affected the workplace. Employers may do three things. They can voluntarily cooperate and provide confidential information. They can ask for employee authorization to release any information, or they may request to be served with a subpoena, a search warrant, or an order from a federal agency. And from here, who knows just where future technological advancements will take us and what controversies will arise. Controversies that we haven't even thought of yet, much less considered.